All right. Well, hi, everybody. I think folks are going to be hopping in, and then some folks are going to be watching this after the fact, but very excited for today's virtual parent coffee combined with the Forest School Online as well as the Forest School and Acton Academy. And today's parent coffee is going to be co-hosted by me and the one and only Brennan Barnard, who I'll introduce in just a minute for those of you who don't know him yet. Um, but the focus of today's parent coffee is actually about colleges and universities. We've gotten some questions not only from high school parents, parents of current high schoolers, but also parents of learners that are younger. Since many folks on this call attended or applied to colleges, the landscape has shifted in some really interesting ways. And I can't think of anybody better than to um, share context for that than Brennan. And I will say we're probably one of the only independent schools in the state of Georgia that, and I guess online schools internationally too, that publicly celebrate the fact that we are not 100% college acceptance. And that's because the high school really is designed to fit the learner and not the other way around. And of course, the majority of our learners in reality are pursuing a college or a university or a two-year college as life's next steps, but not all. A number of learners use the Forest School online or the Forest School and Acton Academy to launch their career or to start a business. In fact, I just had a conversation this morning with one of our high schoolers who's launching their business even now and getting that to count as school credit. And they're likely to pursue that, finishing up Forest. We have a number of learners who've done gap year programs. But we also know what it takes to guide learners to be considered for just a wide array of colleges and universities in the United States, ranging from two-year schools to state schools to large, universities and colleges to junior colleges, as well as some of the most elite colleges and universities in the world. And so you'll see here this list that I'm showing you on the screen is a list of colleges and universities to which learners have been admitted over the last 6 years, and it's actually not complete. I had office hours this morning with some of our seniors, guiding them to do some of their practicals and meet their graduation requirements, and they were letting me know about their plans, and some colleges need to be added to this list. I was just talking this morning actually with Shy Turner, who's going to be speaking at our graduation, and Shy enthusiastically reported that she's been accepted to Pace University, to Kennesaw State, and to Mercer, and she's likely going to move on to Kennesaw State next year. Interestingly, we have three learners that were accepted into Georgia Tech, three seniors that are considering Georgia Tech for next year, one for Morehouse, one for UNC. So it's really a broad array of schools that folks are considering. I work at a couple colleges. I'm on staff faculty at the University of Pennsylvania, and then I'm a guest lecturer at Harvard. And I sat for a while as a volunteer on Harvard's admissions committee, interviewing prospective freshmen to the college. And Brennan, and I'm going to pass it over to Brennan in just a minute, but I want to give you a little background. Brennan, we're really grateful to have Brennan on the team. Brennan Barnard, who you'll see on your screen, is our new director of college counseling this year. He also serves, he wears multiple hats. He serves as director of college counseling at an independent school in California called the Khan Lab School. And if you're curious, that Khan Lab is the same connectivity with Khan Academy, Khan, and some of the founders of that school. And Brennan's been with them for years. Brennan's also an advisor for Harvard's Making Caring Common and the College Guidance Network. With over 20 years in education, Brennan has worked in admissions, counseling, and leadership roles. He regularly writes for Forbes on education and on higher education. And his writing has also appeared in major publications like the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. And he is the co-author, together with Rick Clark, of my favorite book. And of course, I'm biased, but my favorite book on college admissions. And I commend it to all of you who are considering college for your children. And I'll drop a link to it in the chat in a moment, but it's called The Truth About College Admissions. And he advises families through a business as well called Educational Futures. Brennan actually lives in the Northeast and of the United States, and where he's a volunteer firefighter and a father of two college students as well. And it's just in terms of Brennan's role, so you all are aware, at Forest, Brennan's done a lot of behind the scenes work with our guides and some of our leadership team in bringing them up to speed on the latest in college admissions. And so he regularly meets with that group and has customized their learning goals for them. And then once a month, roughly, he offers up for our families a college focused webinar. And at those webinars, families like you are encouraged to bring their questions. After Brennan finishes his presentation, it's a moment where Brennan opens it up and says, what questions do you have? Learners are on that call, parents are on that call, and sometimes the questions are very personal and customized for the learner. And it's really our theory that to the extent to which we all can hear Brennan coach folks through even those very personal questions, it's actually helpful and beneficial for the full group. And so I know even on this call, we've got a parent and a learner who have some questions about the college admissions process this year. And so when we do open it up for questions, Brennan and I both will be able to speak into that, share our perspective, and you all will be able to benefit from that. So I've asked Brennan just to really set the table, nothing long, about what he's observing in the college admissions landscape this year, because it is, y'all, it's a changing landscape from year to year, and it's humbling, and it requires some trust and playing the long game and some real introspection. And that's one of the things I appreciate most about Brennan is his approach very much aligns with our mission around finding a calling that will change the world. Brennan wrote a piece in Forbes last week that you probably saw me link in one of our emails. And the piece starts with inviting learners and families to consider the identity of the learner. Who are you? What are you being called to do? What's inside of you that's not yet in the world? And to really start the college process from there. So it's great to have you guys on here. And Brennan, with that, I'll sort of turn it over to you to set the table, and then we'll open it up for some for Q&A, and we'll see how long it goes.
Thanks. Yeah, this is great. It's great to be with you all. Thanks, Tyler. And I'm going to actually put in the chat a link to a podcast that I host with my co-author, Rick Clark, who's the executive director at Georgia Tech, because this just might be interesting for you to follow, because we interview different college admission leaders about kind of recent trends and kind of stuff we're going to talk about today. But we did one on math equity and recently that I think you'll really enjoy. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and I just have a few slides just I wanted to talk through, and then really we want to open it up to questions, like Tyler said. I wanted to share this. This was a survey done by our professional association, which asked college admission leaders as they review applications, what's most important to them, like to rank the importance of things. And I just thought this would be interesting for folks to see. As you can imagine, their the most impactful thing to them is how students have done in school. And so, this says grades, but in our context at Forest, they're really looking at, like, what has the student taken? How have they challenged themselves? What opportunities have they taken? The strength of the high school curriculum, which is what Tyler and I and others at Forest are communicating to colleges constantly. So they want to know, first and foremost, can a student be academically successful at their school? The answer for Forest students is a resounding yes. But I thought it'd be interesting for you to see some of the things after that. I mean, the next one down after kind of curriculum and performance in the curriculum is positive character attributes. And and I think that's really, really important for you to think about because if you haven't read Tyler's most recent piece about flourishing and how that plays out at Forest, you need to read it because that is, I mean, that is one of the strengths and what drew me to Forest is it is a place that really lifts up individuality and character and these strengths of flourishing, and that shines through to colleges. And so as students think about how they put themselves out there to college, our job is to really celebrate some of those character attributes, the non-cognitive pieces of what makes a student kind of who they are and what they bring to the world. So I think that's really important to think. And then you'll see here essay writing, how a student tells their story. I mean, storytelling is such a huge part of the Forest experience, and and we know that Forest students can really kind of talk about themselves and their experiences in really meaningful ways. And so essay writing, and then students' interest, and then art. I mean, another benefit of being at Forest is that the counselor and Tyler and the guides, teachers really know students well and can write really personal recommendations that shine through and really lift those students up in the admission process. And then extracurricular activities. We don't have class high school rank, so that's not an issue. But you'll see it doesn't get down till the bottom, and there's a couple things below this that I didn't put on that didn't show up. But and then admission test scores are the lowest, right? And so the reality is 80% of colleges and universities in this country are test optional. And so let me say that again, 80% of schools in this country don't require students to submit testing. That said, most students are in Georgia, or a large portion of our students are in Georgia, and it is a state where the public schools do require testing. So that's something to be considered, but just I think that kind of sets the stage for what people are thinking about. This is just some of the trends in college admission, and we want students at Forest to, you can see here, stretch, not stress, right? We want you to stress, or not stress. We want you to stretch. There we go. And dream big and aim high, but with balance. And we don't want you. We want you to get outside your comfort zone, and stretch academically, personally, socially, all these things, but not push out to that outer ring where it turns into to negative stress. Stress is not always a bad thing, and you can have what's called eustress, which is positive stress, and that's in that stretch zone. But when it gets into that negative stress, that's not what we want. And that's what colleges want. They want students to stretch themselves, but not get so overloaded that they then show up to campus and contribute to the kind of larger scale mental health crisis that we have in this country, and are kind of are not able to cope with the demands of college life. As you'll see, these are some of the trends. There's this myth that it's impossible to get into college. That is very much that. It is a myth. It is actually getting easier every year to get into college. It is that national admit rate, the average admit rate is 67%. So 2/3 of colleges take over 50% of all their applicants. There is that's only increased in the last 5 years, so that it is really important to kind of keep that in context. And then there's just so many different ways to a college education. As Tyler said, there are it's not a linear path, and it's not all students don't go right to college. Colleges are creating more and more pathways. Georgia Tech has a pathway. Most colleges have pathways through community community colleges or other experiences, like there's a group called Verto, which does experiences abroad and then transferring into to schools. My own son started college in February rather than in August, and under a February admit program. And so, he took the fall off and worked and held a job and then started in the February, and it was the best thing he did. He had time to kind of prepare. And then there's all kinds of different ways that students are starting. They're starting, terms abroad. They're starting terms off campus. And then you should know, especially if you have a student kind of in the younger years of high school, that there is what's being called the demographic cliff. There is we're kind of at a bubble of number of students applying to college, and that is soon going to drop off after this year. And so colleges more than ever are going to want to enroll students, and they're going to need students. And so I think that's just good to kind of set the stage there. This is just kind of something to consider, that admission math does not equal regular math. That you're going to hear a lot of numbers as you start to look at colleges and things like that. You that don't always take those numbers at face value. Those numbers are going to mean different things. So you're going to see GPA averages, and you're going to see teacher-student ratios, and you're going to see retention rates, and you're going to see admit rates, and all these different things. You need to look beneath the numbers, right? So if a school says they have a 10 to, I don't know, a 15 to 1 student faculty ratio, does that mean all your classes are going to be you and 14 other students with a professor? No, right? It means you might have a first year seminar or first year lecture that's 300 students, and then towards the end of college you might have a class in your major that has 3 students. Different schools factor in different things into that number. Like, so they might include professors who are on sabbatical, or professors who don't teach, that are just doing research. So you always need to ask kind of for more information beyond the numbers. So that's just something to think about as you enter into this search. Here's an exercise I would like everyone to try at home, if you're a student, or if you're a learner, if you're a parent. Try this next time at the dinner table or on a Sunday or something like that. Each member of the family write down the first 10 colleges that come to mind. Not the first 10 colleges you want to apply to, not the first 10 colleges you're looking at, the first 10 colleges that come to mind, for just off the top of your head. And then come together as a family, do that separately, and then come together as a family and share those lists. And don't just share the names, but talk through each college and why it's on that list. So is it on the list because your uncle went to that school, or your classmate was talking about it, or because they made it to the Final Four in the NCAA, or, why is it on the list? And talk through that and talk about what that means, and how that plays into your college search. So just a kind of a fun exercise to do. And then this is just, I haven't actually read this book, but I was Googling things yesterday, and I saw this, and I intend on getting it and reading it, because it sounds great. But we talk a lot about mastery at Forest, and we have the mastery transcript, which is a transcript, if you have not experienced it yet, that will really it helps a student shine in college admission. It helps a colleges really understand the learning experience and dig into what a student has learned at Forest and how they've challenged themselves. And this college admission experience is really about mastery of your destiny. It is about kind of the final stage of your Forest experience, and your mastery of understanding who you are and what you want, and how you apply that to your future. And so I just wanted to kind of put that there as a symbol of kind of what this experience is going to mean for you moving forward. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I want to hear what's on your minds. Hi,
Hi,
Laura.
Brennan. Hey, Tyler. I have a question.
Yeah,
Actually, I have a few questions, but
lots of
I'm gonna,
answers.
I'm gonna start with one that is kind of global confusion as to how to be looking at this entire thing. And I think maybe the flourishing article and the book you just posted will be helpful. And I hope this is helpful to other families who have kids whose interests are like all over the place. But my son is kind of always been thinking along the lines of like aeronautical engineering, cybersecurity, computer science, that type of stuff. Like he's a drone pilot, he's private pilot, he's got a cyber certificate of something like the entry level, whatever. But he also is a classical pianist and trying to find a way like to interpret those interests in a way that, like on purpose, he's reading Dante's Purgatory Inferno or something right now because it goes with Liszt's classical. I have no idea, but he does. But he wants to pursue this cyber software computer science thing, but is not going to be, I don't think, a happy human if he doesn't have music in his life. So where do we find the balance in terms of a direction to head when you have a learner with such diverse kind of opposite end of the spectrum type interests? What do you
Yeah.
advise?
That's a great question. I mean, I definitely think there's schools out there that will honor those both sides of him. I think that if it was just focused on the aeronautical engineering, that would be a challenge because there's a very kind of small subset of schools that have those programs. And but In terms of cybersecurity and some of that stuff, there are places where like I just Northeastern jumps to mind, for example, where you can go and you can study those fields in depth, but also take those other courses, right? Take the courses in music and music theory and the humanities and round out your experience. I mean, ultimately, you know, I think as he gets closer to defining what major he's going to focus on, there's going to be some hard decisions, right? Like you're going to have to decide, okay, is this something I focus on professionally, and then this is something I find other experiences to wrap around it, either kind of outside of school or at the school, but not as a major. But I think there are definitely options, I guess is what I'm saying.
And Laura, I'll weigh in here too. My children are similar ages as yours as well. Having done this work for a while, one entry point, a couple entry points I find helpful in this conversation. One is inviting kids to think about problems in the world that they care about a lot, like problems that maybe other people don't care about as much as they do, that they would be interested in working on for the rest of their life. Like for me personally, I've just done a lot of reflection over the years, and I hate really boring instruction. I was super bored as a kid. That's a problem I can work on for my whole life. I also hate when kids are not surrounded by multiple caring adults. That's like a problem that exists in the world. And then I'm a person of faith too. I hate that folks, we can be disconnected from ultimate reality, and from higher power. And those for me, if you look at my career trajectory, I've been working on those three things in different ways my whole life, paid or unpaid. So I think one entry point is like, hey, what are the problems? And then the other thing that's a bit more practical and a little less esoteric or philosophical it is about what skills do our kids possess that people would be willing to pay them for? What and how are they developing those? Another way that could be framed is like challenging a young person to think, how are you going to create value in the world and be able to prove that value as well? And, you know, it is just a reality that, and there's tons of different ways to answer that and do that. But I find that that helps kids anchor a little bit, you know, this topic that Brennan's talking about, like what is the thing that needs to be the professional thing that gets built. So those are just a couple entry points that may be helpful.
Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you both.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, two things, just because it popped in my head as Mrs. McDonald was saying that, but the fact that her child is a concert pianist is absolutely amazing. And we had a friend that studied at Curtis up in the Philadelphia area, and she was allowed to take classes at UPenn for free. So that might be something you want to look at. Also, Johns Hopkins Peabody Institute. So you could do both. But my question is, how are the Ivies looking at mastery transcripts? Because, like, are they looking favorably at it? Like, what? Because Tyler, I know you sit on the boards for Harvard and UPenn, and don't think that that didn't play a role in us enrolling Josie for the forest school. But like, how are the Ivies looking at mastery transcripts? Like, are they saying, well, are they looking at the kids and saying, well, you need like a higher math, or you need more experience? Like, what are they doing? Because I saw that the Brown University admitted one of the kids for their summer program, but did they admit the child for the regular school year?
Yeah, so I can speak to that because I've talked to a lot of admission officers about mastery transcript, because both at Forest and both at Con Lab School we've used mastery transcript, and they are looking at it just as they would any other transcript from another school. They you know, there's so many different types of learning environments and transcripts throughout the country. There's the traditional transcript, there's homeschool transcripts, there's the mastery transcript. I mean, it really runs the gamut. And so they have become adept and really experts in unpacking what the experience has been at that school. And so they perfectly accept the mastery transcript, and are looking at it to kind of in depth to understand what courses are available to the student and how they've challenged themselves within that, within Forest's curriculum, but also outside of the curriculum through apprenticeships and other experiences. And I mean, that's why also, I don't know how familiar you are with the master transcript, but it has a featured work section that really allows students to kind of lift up areas of strength and areas specific projects, and that really helps the students shine as they kind of look to tell their story. And so in short, it's they look upon it favorably. They take it. In terms of the summer schools, the summer schools don't really have any implication on a student's admission to any college. There's not kind of a, you went to Harvard's or Brown's summer school, and so you're more likely to get into that college or something like that. So
Yeah, and that particular learner, Lauren, who attended the Brown summer program, did not actually apply to Brown undergrad. So we don't know yet. We have had a few learners apply to Harvard, and I think they're hearing back this week potentially. And I look forward to the day, you know, when we've got a learner who's graduated into an Ivy. But on our end, what we're doing behind the scenes is with any college or university, we're staying in touch. So after our learners submit their transcript, mastery transcript to the school, we actually reach out within a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, to confirm receipt, you know, of it and see, hey, is there anything else that you need? And the reason we do that, Lauren, is because college admissions teams roll over pretty quickly. They often have some of their readers, you know, they'll do it for a couple of years and then they will advance their own career and they'll be replaced. And so that is one of the challenges that really all of us have, all high schools have, is to, you know, reform relationships, to stay in touch with these new folks who may not be familiar with the Forest School and Acton Academy or the Forest School Online. And so it's incumbent upon us to do our best to stay in touch, to make them aware of the great learning opportunities that we have here, and to be responsive. And if and when a college and university comes back to us and says, we need more information, we're going to have a conversation with them about that. And what do you need? And we're not going to get in the way of a learner being considered. And we'll share that information. And what we've done is sort of a college admissions tour for years. I've gotten on the phone with the head of college admissions at most of the colleges to which our learners have applied, together with the leadership of the Mastery Transcript Consortium, in order to introduce them to and enculturate, them to the Mastery Transcript. Brennan's co-author, Rick, I sat in his office years ago at Tech and, was showing him an example, and Rick was asking questions and giving great feedback. And so that's the sort of back and forth, that we have with those colleges. And then the other thing I'll say, and I'm dropping this in the chat, is when the high school was designed, our high school was designed, it was designed for maximum flexibility. If you go to a traditional high school in the US, there's usually just kind of one way to prove rigor, the rigor that Brennan was talking about at the beginning of this call. And that's sort of like max out your APs, basically, is like one of the main ways. Well, we actually cap our APs. And we cap our dual enrollment. And we early on, when we started the our high school, we met with a ton of college admissions officers and got their feedback on this approach, and they gave us a resounding thumbs up, because what they see is how many high school kids who are really trying to prove rigor are anxious and are stressing themselves out. And so what our high school is designed to do is to allow learners to prove rigor in many different ways. So one example is mastery credits. So there's 20 required to graduate from our school, but you can go for as many as 30. We actually have, no one has actually gotten 30 yet. I think we may have a learner this year trying to get 30, but that's a way to prove rigor, because it is hard to do that. Another is to max out the number of independent studies, which we call learner design courses. Another is to max out the number of apprenticeships that they do. And some of our learners do an inordinate number of apprenticeships, and they showcase those when they apply to these schools. Dual enrollment is another way they can prove rigor. Badges, they can get extra badges, and we cap that as well, so they're not stressing them out and they're still flourishing, like I wrote about. And then GPA, there's ways to get an even higher GPA if a school is going to end up looking for GPA, and usually GPA comes into play because we don't give grades. GPA will come into play if and only if a college is considering a learner for a merit-based scholarship for which they require the GPA. So that's a way. And so what you'll see in our school's history is learners who have looked at this list and said, oh, I want to prove rigor in these 3 ways, or these 2 ways, or this 1 way, or these 5 ways, or whatever it is, so that it really is customized, and flexible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You bet. What else? And Laura, I know you sound like you had more questions than one, Laura. Bring it.
All right, this is a much more practical one. You referred to Verto, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So I take a great portion of the ownership of this. In the fall, we were kind of in a bit of a family crisis, and we missed all the application deadlines. I had -0 bandwidth, and that's where we were. So this January, my son applied to the few schools that still were accepting applications. One of them was Colorado School of Mines. And we knew that applying late, they obviously have already filled a lot of their spots. School of Mines got back to him and said, we filled all our spots, so you're on the wait list, but you have a guaranteed place in fall of 2026 if you do this Verto study abroad program. And they have it so that I guess like 100% of everything that you do transfers.
Yeah.
So basically, you're doing your entire freshman year. You have to do half in Sevilla and half in Florence. So my questions are a couple related to that. One, do they really get prepared for the rigor of, for example, Colorado School of Mines sophomore year classes by doing the freshman year abroad? Number two, would that year abroad, I don't know if they would show up as like they attended School of Mines, or if they attended, I forget who the partner school with Verto is.
University of New Haven.
New Haven, okay. Or would it show that? And depending on that, or does it matter? Because he did miss applying to all of his kind of top choice schools. he's thinking about transferring in, looking at applying as a transfer student. Would that year abroad be as strong on a transfer application?
Yeah.
All good questions. Yeah.
And then we're thinking, or because just doing research on this, there's some people who are like, I wasn't planning to study abroad my freshman year. So just because they offered it, I'm, why not just do then community college instead and then try to transfer? Like, we're very confused on this.
Yeah. It's all great questions, and I understand your confusion. Verito, I mean, if he were to stay at Colorado School of Mines, I think Verito would be a great option, because ultimately it's not going to matter, the degree will be from Colorado School of Mines. I think it's an amazing opportunity to have an experience like that, and go abroad and I think grow in ways probably not even expected. So I've known students who've done it, Verito in different places. And just Tyler was saying, I studied in Spain, as did I, and had an amazing experience. If the idea is to transfer after freshman year, after first year, I would say probably better to go the community college route, rather than Verito, because Verito is really kind of a bridge program into a certain university. And I would say if the intention is to take the year, take a full load of classes, and then apply as a transfer student to another college or university, then that would probably be the best route.
And Laura, just to provide some comfort too, there's a number of graduates of Forest who've gone on to do a gap year program, or community college, and do just that, and leave their options open for that second year. We had one learner do that from Kennesaw State, and then is now at Tech, Georgia Tech. And then we have a number of learners who went to Impact 360, which is a faith-based, gap year program that also gains you some college credit as well. And then they applied yet again during that year to gain acceptance into some colleges and universities for their what would be their sophomore year.
Do you know, as just kind of a quick follow-up question to that, do you know if the New Haven credits, I know that because they're kind of partnered with School of Mines for this particular situation, so they accept, they require you take these classes and 100% of it transfers. So you've basically finished your freshman year. Do you know if the credits from that would transfer to other universities as well? Like
Essentially, University of New Haven is the school of record. So they're the ones granting the degree credits. And so yes, they would offer those credits to a bunch of schools. And you can also see, you probably have looked, but on their website you can also see kind of what some of the other schools where they also partner with, but it's not just limited to those schools in terms of the credit you gain.
Yeah, Laura, I actually think it's amazing that Brennan knows the answer to that question, because each college and university, their office of the registrar considers courses and credits from other colleges in different ways. And so what if I were to take your question and apply it to everybody here on the call, if your learner does complete credits either in dual enrollment while they're in high school or during their freshman year post high school, before they begin, I would call up the registrar office or go online for a search to find out if those credits would actually be accepted, just to trust and verify, honestly. Because, for example, what a Georgia Tech would accept would be very different than what like a UGA, a Colorado College or whatever, would accept. So just double checking there on the front end before you sort of invest that time, energy, and money, I think is a good move. And again, I think it's incredible that Brendan knows that particular example. There's just so many colleges and universities, it's impossible for us to know all of them. What else?
I don't want to hog this call, but I do have more questions.
Everybody's gaining from your questions, so please go shoot away.
Totally.
Okay, in terms of transferring.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a very short answer, so I'll ask it super quickly first. In your view, would it be easier to transfer if he wanted to at least keep that door open? Would it be easier to transfer from a US school to a US school versus he also got accepted to UVic in Victoria. He's Canadian dual thing, than from a Canadian university? Or would you see that as, I can't say as a general answer, yes, absolutely, it would be school specific again?
I think it'd be more school specific, but generally between the US and Canada, it's a pretty similar curriculum. If you were saying, he was accepted to a school in the UK, it might be a little different, but generally, I mean, you'd want to ask. You'd want to ask definitely, but it's pretty fluid.
Okay, and on the subject of transferring as a second year versus transferring as a third year. And the only reason I'm asking that is because of this potential path of Verdo and then 1 year at School of Mines, for example, and then transferring, or 2 years of community college and then like the whole point being, the more time, in my view, the more time he spends studying something, the more he'll be able to hone his true interests and then decide, okay, no, I definitely want to go the route of this. And now I want to make sure I have my degree from this school because,
I would say the earlier the better.
Okay.
The earlier the transfer, the better, because especially within certain majors, and especially if you're talking about cyber security or cyber like computer related or anything engineering or things like that, they have specific prerequisites that you have to have completed at their university to access their upper level courses. And so this potential you'd have to kind of repeat credits. So it's probably going to end up costing more and spending more time. So I think the earlier the better.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing I would add to that, just as a layer of consideration, Laura, is again, it gets back to purpose and calling. And, in my view, like what we do in this world, there's always, inherent value, intrinsic value, but there's also instrumental value, stuff, learning experiences, colleges, universities, they're just good. I mean, it's good experience to be there. And they're also good for something, and if you can, with your son, leverage both of those, and feel, to what level do you and your husband feel confident that he would not only have a good experience there because it's just a good place, but also it would be good and useful for him, and I think to the extent you have confidence in those, that would probably give you an indication as to like when to, get in as soon as possible.
Thank you.
What else? These are great, Laura.
Hey, I'm gonna go look at my list.
All right, Lauren, bring it.
Are there any colleges, college representatives coming to the Forest School anytime soon just to talk to the high schoolers?
Brittany had somebody recently. I can't remember who it was, or she's got somebody planned. I'll have to ask. I don't remember. Brennan, do you remember?
I don't, but typically the more busy season for that to occur is in the fall. That's when a lot of the college admission reps are on the road, kind of in the road warriors from September to November, or late August, actually mid-August in the South, to November. They're really in the area visiting, and there are also some college fairs, which are another great way to get to know a bunch of different schools and to meet the reps. And so we'll definitely share those opportunities as they come around, but there might be a few this spring. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcos, I see you're here on the call too. Any questions for me or Brennan?
No, I think my mom answered a bunch of them that I had.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
That's what we're there for, right?
I love your screensaver, by the way, Marcus.
Thank you.
I've
I
never,
noticed some of the other folks on the call are parents of younger learners. Any questions from any of y'all?
Hey,
Wow.
Tyler, you've got Chris and Crystal here. So because Kate's still finishing up 8th grade and going into 9th grade, we still have some time. But her current trajectory, the way that she's going, I think her goal too is to look at getting done earlier. Is that something that's possible so that way she can start her college career? Because I know she's working closely with you too. You know where she wants to go. So I think her other goal is to try and get through high school a little bit sooner than going the full senior year so that she can start her college career a little sooner as well.
Yes. First of all, congratulations. Kate just won a race in crew recently, right?
Yes, she did. Thank you.
Amazing. We were celebrating her yesterday at school. She was thrilled. Um,
My
and
daughter,
apparently Anna,
my daughter's also a rower, so I can appreciate that.
oh,
Oh,
amazing.
awesome.
And apparently Kate sang out loud yesterday for some folks, and some of the staff were raving. They were like, "Kate, you gotta sing more, girl." It was fun. But yeah, Kate, she's a go-getter. She's reached out to me via email to talk about admissions to some Ivies, and I directed her to my assistant. So we're going to get some time together soon. But the answer is yes. Essentially what we are as a team, we are agnostic to the speed with which a learner is going to complete their badge plan and advance different levels.
Okay.
And so what we do is practically is we ask the learner and families, and we're asking you all, like, there is sort of a, let's call it a traditional pacing, right, for young people. But if they want to go slower, which is real, that's fine. Or if they want to go faster, that's real. And then we'll help you think through the trade-offs of that. I mean, frankly, Crystal, the conversation I've had with learners who've gone fast is, how do you feel about your daughter or your son being in and living in an urban center at the age of 16, 17 years old? And that's a different, because they decided to go fast, and so that was a different conversation than one that was just academic. It was social and emotional and all the things.
Mm.
But yes, we've had 2 learners now complete high school in 3 years. One is at Georgia Tech, and one was accepted at Georgia Tech, but has decided to go to Morehouse next year. And so essentially the process is that decision gets communicated to the whole team, and then our guides, at online and or in person, will work with the learner to work backwards to set goals for every year, so that again, so that they're flourishing, so that they're not crushing or killing themselves
Mhm.
to make it happen. But we'll honor the goals. So yeah, there's history for that. There's precedence for that. And it's amazing when you for learners who are motivated, and that's not something we assume, by the way. I mean, it's always our goal to try and help young people make a connection between math, writing, reading, science, history, and what it is that is inside of them, that they're meant to do. And for some that comes pretty quickly, and for others it takes longer. But for those who are motivated and have found that motivation from a young age, they can go very fast. And we don't want to slow them down. I literally told a high schooler this morning, I was like, yeah, the school does not want to slow you down. So let's help you figure out how to count what you're doing as school, because they're launching a business. Or excuse me, they've already launched it. They're building it to be even more. And I'm like, oh yeah, that could be a learner design course. That could be a quest. And we sort of riffed on that. So Brennan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and from the admission point of view, I think the question that will always be coming from college admission is why, right? And what's the motivation, and they'll wonder, especially the most selective schools, like, are there opportunities you're missing, that your student is missing by accelerating through? And then I don't know if this will be an issue, but if she's hoping to row, that is the recruiting process also plays into that. And so there could be some potential challenges there in terms of when coaches are able to talk with students based on the NCAA rules and kind of accelerating. And so there are lots of kind of factors to consider, but like Tyler said, there's always options, and I think just identifying the motivation is really important.
No, I appreciate that because that is part of what she's doing. Is not that her long-term career is rowing, but that is she's using that as the ability to help with her college career.
Right.
So that's good. We didn't think about that. So I'll have to make sure I talk to her about that component too, because that's what she's hoping to do is row for, universities, particularly the ones that she's got on top of mind in Boston. So that's what she's wanting to do.
Yeah, and have her crew coach. I mean, she won't necessarily be able to talk to those coaches right now, but have her crew coach reach out to those coaches at the college level and talk through that with them and get their
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great insight. Thank you.
Lauren.
The other thing that you prompted Crystal me to think about was when you said she's doing crew for her college resume. At some of our nation's most elite colleges and universities, the thing that is being asked to kids, and it goes back to this question that Brennan said about why, it's hey, what do you care about as a person, and what have you done about it? The most competitive applicants to these schools, they have the academic, they've ticked those boxes, they've taken the courses that they need. In some cases, they have the test scores that they need, but what sets them apart is a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, a sense of like, hey, this is what I care about, and this is what I've done about it in the world. And so if it's crew and I'm an admissions counselor there, I'd be like, well, say more. Like, why do you care about that? What have you done about it? And I can imagine a world where a learner has a compelling answer around crew. I can also imagine a world where a learner's answer around crew is just like, well, I did it so that, I could be in the conversation with you, which is less compelling. I think it gets back to that like purpose finding, which I would just encourage us all as parents is keep asking our kids, what's inside of you that's not yet in the world, and how can we help you like, bring that out even now and not wait until life's next steps.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Lauren?
Okay, hello, thank you very much. This is Rachel. I'm a parent to recently graduated senior from Forest School, Ezra, as well as Joshua, who's now 1 year short of going into senior year. As a parent of international students at Forest School, I've always felt that there's something more that can be done to help connect or make sense of all the learnings and experiences that they are picking up from Forest School, and how do they apply that in the world at large, especially the context that we live in and work in. I say that because our eldest, Ezra, graduated. He spent about not a year, several months in South Korea working on missions as well here in Africa with mission teams. And I think we've watched him sort of struggle to relate the whole Forest School experience and what he wants to do, and sometimes feeling probably that he needs to build up his portfolio to apply to schools. We've also sensed that in as much as Forest School has granted him a lot of opportunities and learning experiences, that is not so much recognized in African universities as an add-on, and yet we want it to be recognized because that's something that we've seen contributes to the making of the kind of person he's becoming. So Tyler, I've always felt that there's a need for ground to have a discussion with you on how exactly we put this together for international students who are going to Forest School. Now speaking to our youngest, who's 1 year short of a senior at Forest School, he swims for the national team, and he totally knows what he wants to do, aeronautical engineering or aerospace engineering. But then again, how do we take advantage of that and help him really get into the right school not necessarily in Africa, but out of Africa. So why I'm raising this is because I've always felt, and the reason actually why we came to Forest School is because it's a great opportunity to allow them to really grow in different ways. But then application is also constrained here. So what do you have to say, Tyler? I mean, how do you make sense of everything that I'm presenting here? What would you say?
Yeah, and this might be our last question, but it's a good one because we have a hard stop at the end of the hour. I'm hearing you say, Rachel, that you think there's greater opportunity to help the learners make a connection between the great learning experiences that they've had at Forest and how they might be able to apply that where they live in the world, and especially how they can apply that to the college process outside of their home country. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would say one place, there's two things that come to mind. One is in the context of our ongoing check-ins. I think if a guide knows this is a need and a I think that's something that we can easily integrate and include in our regular check-ins with that learner to help them reflect, brainstorm, make sense of, and apply. So I think that's one thing. The other and I think I can share this feedback too, Rachel, with our leadership team, and Brennan and I can talk about it and riff on ways to improve. But the thing I would point to now for your other child at Forest would be what I dropped in the chat, which right now we're using U Science, which is it's not going to solve everything. It's just a tool, but it's a series of brain games that learners are invited to do over the course of a few days, and it gives them a profile of their preferences and their aptitudes, and then it takes their preferences and aptitudes and it matches them to possible careers and possible colleges across North America. And I think this is a very good starting place. I would encourage all of us parents to ask our learners, hey, did you finish your U Science? And let's look at those responses together. Let's look at the profile together. And then let's make those connections. And then that provides the learner with some very tangible ideas for apprenticeships. And it also gives them some tangible ideas for colleges that they can then look into on their own and do some college tours, some virtual college tours, reach out via phone or Skype or email to college admissions officers, and I think make those connections, more keenly. Does that make sense, Rachel?
Yes, it does. Yeah, we'll pursue those. I've seen that already, the youth science. I've seen them work on it, and I think it's probably just like you say, just coming back to revise or review with them in terms of what does that mean,
Yeah.
or what does that mean to them. Do you have some counseling? What is it? Life? I don't not life, but
Well, Rachel, you're looking at it. I mean, I think these monthly meetings that Brennan does, I would encourage your child to come to every one of them and to ask, to listen and to ask the questions, and if you want to give your child a list of questions that they need to be asking, Brennan is a great resource. And then we can bring those into the check-ins.
okay, all right, thanks.
Well, y'all, time is up. I want to thank everybody for these great questions. This has been very practical, very helpful, both a high level and sort of the nitty gritty. Brendan, any final thoughts or comments before we hang up here?
No, just I mean, like we said, there's not one path, and but there's lots of ways forward. So these are exciting times.
Awesome. And Laura, yes, feel free to send me any follow-up questions and I'll answer them or point you in the right direction. But great to see y'all. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.